Did a Buffalo Bills insider just reveal what Brandon Beane might be planning before the NFL trade deadline? According to Bills insider Joe Buscaglia, there could be some real movement coming soon. Writing for The Athletic, he highlighted 7 players that Buffalo fans should keep an eye on, names that could become part of a potential Bills trade as the clock ticks down toward deadline day. Now, if we look at recent history, Beane has made a move at nearly every trade deadline. This organization doesn't shy away from pulling the trigger when they see an opportunity. But this year, things are a little tighter. Buffalo sits only about $3 million below the salary cap, which doesn't leave much breathing room to take on a massive contract. In fact, the only team in a tougher cap position right now is the Miami Dolphins, and unlike Buffalo, Miami looks more like a seller than a buyer at this point. For the Bills, it's the opposite story. With the AFC race heating up, they can't afford to sit still. Buffalo's weak spots are becoming more obvious with every game: wide receiver depth, secondary coverage, and injuries on the defensive front. If they're going to keep pace with Kansas City, Baltimore, and Miami, some reinforcements might be essential. But before we dive deeper into the names being discussed, before listening to the latest news, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and don't forget to hit the bell icon. Now, let's move on to the new news. One of the biggest names linked to Buffalo's trade radar is Chris Olave. His name has surfaced repeatedly in connection with the Bills, and for good reason. Olave fits perfectly into what this offense needs right now: a true Z receiver who can separate, stretch the field, and win on every route level. He's an elite route runner with game-changing speed and reliable hands, exactly what Josh Allen needs alongside Stefon Diggs. Financially, he makes sense too. With only a prorated cap hit of around $794,000, Olave fits comfortably under Buffalo's limited salary cap space. He's still on his rookie deal, heading into his 5th-year option next season, which makes him an ideal short- and long-term acquisition. However, there's a catch. Reports from Diana Rossini suggest the Saints and Olave are currently working on a contract extension, which could cool down any trade speculation for now. Still, with 10 days remaining before the deadline, anything can happen. And if the Bills truly believe this is their championship window, standing pat might not be an option. As ideal as a Chris Olave trade sounds, reality might tell a different story. The New Orleans Saints rarely move off key players, even when things aren't going perfectly. Their front office doesn't operate with a fire sale mentality. So while Olave would fit Buffalo beautifully, it's hard to imagine the Saints letting him go, especially if an extension is already in the works. But if New Orleans locks Olave down, that doesn't close the door for Buffalo, it simply shifts their attention to another intriguing name: Rashid Shaheed. Shaheed has quietly become one of the NFL's most explosive deep threats. His ability to stretch the field vertically is exactly what the Bills have been missing: that pure, game-breaking speed that forces defenses to back off and gives Josh Allen room to operate. At 27 years old and entering the final year of his deal, he's not just fast, he's affordable and attainable. Buffalo could realistically land him for a late day 3 pick, the kind of move Brandon Beane has made countless times before. And if Shaheed performs, the upside is massive: a dangerous downfield weapon and a consistent kick and punt returner, something this team has needed all season. If he walks in free agency later, the Bills could still recoup value through a compensatory pick. In every way, Shaheed checks the boxes: smart value, immediate impact, and long-term flexibility. Another potential target mentioned by insiders like Joe Buscaglia is Jakobi Meyers of the Las Vegas Raiders. His situation has been complicated. Meyers has made it clear he's not entirely happy in Las Vegas, and his name has floated in trade rumors for weeks. For Buffalo, Meyers represents a very different kind of addition. He's not the burner type like Shaheed, but he's an elite route technician, a smart player who can win with precision and physicality. He thrives in the short to intermediate game, creating separation on critical downs and blocking effectively in the run game, traits that fit Sean McDermott's team-first mentality perfectly. Financially, a deal for Meyers wouldn't break the bank, and it might only cost a fourth-round pick. The risk is low, the reward is dependable production, and the Bills would be getting another reliable target to support Stephon Diggs and Khalil Shakir. If the Bills truly see themselves as contenders this season, and they do, these are the type of calculated, high-impact moves that can transform their offense overnight. Buffalo doesn't need a superstar, they need a spark. And both Rashid Shaheed and Jakobi Meyers could light that fuse. So far, we've talked about offensive upgrades, but the conversation isn't stopping there. The Buffalo Bills front office is quietly surveying both sides of the ball as the trade deadline inches closer, and Joe Buscaglia's report from The Athletic hints at just how active they could become. Among the wide receiver targets still under discussion, one stands out as particularly realistic given Buffalo's salary cap situation. Jakobi Meyers, with his $5.7 million cap hit, would require a bit of financial creativity from Brandon Beane, but it's doable. Beane has a proven track record of restructuring deals and shifting money when he believes a move could elevate this roster. The Bills know they're in a critical stretch of the season. The AFC race is tightening, and every playmaker matters. Wide receiver help remains the top priority, but there's growing interest in adding defensive depth as well, particularly in the secondary and along the defensive line, where injuries have begun to pile up. Buffalo's pass rush has taken hits in recent weeks, and the loss of key rotational players has exposed thin layers in the front seven. That's where a mid-tier veteran or a versatile edge defender could make a real difference. A player who can pressure the quarterback, set the edge, and rotate effectively in Sean McDermott's system would help stabilize a unit that's been stretched thin. Names circulating among insiders suggest that the Bills are exploring multiple defensive options, from depth corners who can play outside and in the slot, to linemen capable of generating interior push. The team isn't expected to chase superstars, they're targeting smart, scheme-fitting players who can step in immediately and strengthen the rotation. One theme has become clear across all these rumors: Buffalo isn't in panic mode, but they're not sitting idle either. This is a front office that understands timing, value, and opportunity. Beane's moves at the deadline have always been strategic, not flashy, and history shows they usually pay off when the Bills need it most. As the deadline approaches, expect the Bills to weigh every option carefully. Whether it's a shifty route runner on offense or a steady hand on defense, the mission remains the same: to keep Buffalo's championship window wide open. As the clock winds down toward the NFL trade deadline, the Buffalo Bills continue to evaluate one central question: where can a single move make the biggest impact? The wide receiver discussion hasn't cooled off, and one intriguing new name has surfaced: Rashad Bateman of the Baltimore Ravens. Bateman, still just 25 years old, was a standout talent coming out of college, a first-round prospect known for his toughness at the catch point and his ability to win along the boundary. While his career in Baltimore hasn't exploded statistically, much of that stems from the Ravens' system and target distribution. When healthy, Bateman's hands, physicality, and sideline control make him a dependable option, and in Buffalo's offense, his role could expand quickly. Financially, he's well within reach. With a $926,000 cap hit, Bateman fits neatly under the Bills' limited salary cap space, making him one of the most financially reasonable options on the board. He might not bring the same top-end burst as Rashid Shaheed, but he offers stability, experience, and reliability, traits that could help balance the offense in critical moments. Of course, the conversation doesn't end with the wide receivers. Defensive reinforcements remain on Brandon Beane's radar as well. Injuries have tested Buffalo's depth along the defensive line, and a familiar face could provide some stability: Harrison Phillips. The former Bills defensive tackle has continued to perform consistently since leaving Buffalo, showcasing strength and discipline in the trenches. With a manageable $1.96 million cap hit, Phillips represents a smart, low-risk reunion option. He's the kind of player who fits seamlessly back into Sean McDermott's system, a run-stopper with leadership qualities and deep familiarity with the locker room culture. However, whether the Bills make that kind of move may depend on how confident they feel about the returns of Larry Ogunjobi and Michael Hoy, both of whom are expected to bolster the line soon. In the end, Buffalo's trade approach will likely be strategic rather than aggressive. The Bills don't need a blockbuster move, they need smart, efficient upgrades, the kind that patch weaknesses without shaking the foundation. Every season, contenders find one player who becomes the difference maker down the stretch. Whether it's a speedy receiver like Shaheed, a dependable technician like Myers, or a steady defensive presence like Phillips, the next week will determine if Buffalo takes that final step toward completing their roster. And if history tells us anything, it's that Brandon Beane knows exactly when to strike. If the Buffalo Bills don't manage to land a receiver, the next logical move could come in the trenches, and there are several intriguing defensive tackles who could immediately make an impact. One of them is Malik Collins, a versatile interior lineman who can line up at both the 1-tech and 3-tech positions. Standing 6'2" and weighing around 300 pounds, Collins brings power, leverage, and surprising quickness for his size. He's the kind of player who could immediately help plug the middle of Buffalo's defensive line, especially with the recent wave of injuries that's tested the unit's depth. If the Cleveland Browns decide to offload veterans during a potential fire sale, Collins could be a value pickup, a short-term stabilizer who doesn't demand major draft capital or cap space. For a team like Buffalo, that kind of affordable addition could quietly strengthen the defense without disrupting roster flexibility. However, the name generating the most buzz among Bills fans might be another familiar one, Rasul Douglas. The veteran cornerback, once part of Buffalo's division rival the Green Bay Packers, has been playing inspired football this season. With 4 pass breakups already, he's proving that his instincts and ball skills remain sharp. Adding Douglas back into the mix would feel like a classic Brandon Beane move, bringing in a proven veteran who understands how to fit within a playoff-caliber locker room. His $664,000 cap hit makes him one of the most affordable and realistic targets on the market. More importantly, his experience could immediately stabilize a secondary that's been adjusting to injuries and inconsistency. Douglas still has something left in the tank, he plays with confidence, tackles well, and brings leadership to the back end. For a defense that's been tested throughout the season, that presence could make a real difference in the final stretch. At this point, Buffalo's trade direction depends on health and opportunity. If the offense can find rhythm, Beane might pivot to defense. If injuries linger, a move in the trenches becomes more urgent. But make no mistake, this front office is evaluating everything. Every name, every number, every potential spark. The Bills know what's at stake. With Josh Allen leading the charge and a roster built to contend, one smart trade could be the difference between a good season and a Super Bowl run. As the trade deadline approaches, one thing is certain, Buffalo isn't done yet.